When we had the rooftop Koreans versus the gangbangers in South Central Los Angeles, and everybody got really worked up during the whole Rodney King deal. You had, some clashing differences of opinion. Well, now we've got Chicago gangbangers rage against newly arrived Venezuelan migrants as Tren de Aragua moves in. City is going to go up in flames. Is that going to happen? Does that make sense? Is that reasonable? Let's get into it. Here we go.
America has allowed gangs to enter our country.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now.
The city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke. It's going to go up in flame.
Gangs in Chicago are angry over the influx of migrants and criminals in their city. They say money that should be going to the African-American community on the South Side is instead going to what they call non-citizens, and warn that turf wars between Chicago's gangs and groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua could see Chicago, quote, go up in flames.
That's not what they're upset about. The gangs on the South Side of Chicago are not upset about federal resources going to the immigrants. They are worried about Tren de Aragua taking over their turf and their criminal enterprise. They've had it on lockdown for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, the Biden administration decides to, over the last 4 years, just let millions of people come through the southern border. And a bunch of them are from Venezuela. And a bunch of them are Tren de Aragua members. And they're setting up shop here in the United States, specifically South Side of Chicago, because you know what? If it's good for, well-established, criminal gang members, then it's good for Tren de Aragua. So turf war, that's what they're upset about. They're going to have to defend their turf against somebody scoping in, taking their business.
Matt McDermott and I traveled to Chicago's South Side to see what was happening for ourselves after we heard about a police report last month that the Tren de Aragua gang had taken over an office building there. We spoke to a number of young, hardcore gang members, as well as gang elders who have retired from the life, and just regular citizens who are very much part of the community. And they're all furious at the estimated $500 million that's reportedly been funneled toward new migrants in Chicago since 2022. And they aren't happy either about what they say are Venezuelan criminal gangs that are leaving the shelters and spilling out into the South Side into abandoned buildings.
It is impossible to release gang members and criminals into our country through the borders and broken walls, and then infiltrate them in our community that's already impoverished, that's already broken, that's already disinvested in. When the black gangs, the leadership in the black gangs in Chicago get fed up with the illegalities and the criminal activity of these migrants or non-citizens, the city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke, it's going to go up in flame, and there's going to be nothing that the National Guard or our government can do about it when the bloodshed hit the streets.
When we had the rooftop Koreans, they got real upset that, during the Rodney King rioting, taking over, you had people in South Central LA just absolutely trashing community, neighborhood. And the rooftop Koreans got up on top, and they started to, fight back against their territory. We're going to see something like that? Yeah, I think so. I mean, this makes sense. Tren de Aragua, coming from Venezuela, taking over a little territory in Chicago, that's not outside of the realm of possibility, is it? That just makes absolute sense. There's a built-in marketplace. They've already got community in Chicago. They've got community in New York City. They've got community in Idaho. So taking over a little turf in Chicago that's ripe for the pickings makes absolute sense for me. At what point in time this will explode, that's kind of anybody's guess, right? But I bet you it's sooner than later, and it's going to be tough to keep a lid on that because you've already got so many shootings happening. You've just got so many gangbangers shooting each other, shooting people, shooting whomever, and you're going to see those numbers even increase further as the turf wars hit. So be wild.
Blacks against migrants.
Zach Massey did time in state prison with Tyrone Muhammad, although he's only 27. He's a leader on the streets and said he's disgusted by the money going to Venezuelan migrants at the expense, he says, of the African-American community.
I finally actually talked to him on the translator app, and he told me all the things that he got going on, how they help him get a car, apartment, clothes, link. So it's just I just be looking at it like, they ain't got no Social Security, no. Where they come from? He probably not even here legally.
They get right here. They get quick housing, quick funding, food, and get cars with no license. They can't even read English and stuff like that. So they get all these perks when they get here, and we still here starving. So what we gonna do about it? Are y'all gonna listen to our cries?
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now in this area. Right now, you don't see them because they come out at night. They said they took this courtway over probably by last week. He said it was 100 Venezuelans standing out in the front right here.
Terry, is it an abandoned building? How did they just take it over?
They just, when you take over something, you just stand outside and that's called showing the flag.
What kind of guns?
Semi-automatics, anything you name, you're gonna see it on the street. These boys got so many big guns that if they're 150 pounds, the gun is bigger than them. I swear.
But they know how to handle it, right? They know what. Tell me about the fact that they're criminals, right? This is a criminal element. These aren't just a bunch of Venezuelans that walked over the border and used to be gardeners back home, right?
Right. And they come from the gangland. They come from rougher gangs than us.
One gang member who only gave his name as David on a particularly dangerous drug dealing corner on the South Side did not hold back when he talked about the influx of criminal gangs from other countries into Chicago.
The real issue is that America has allowed gangs to enter our country. Gangs that they would consider terrorist groups that are formed here. We are terrorist groups if we're in a gang. They let terrorists in our country.
The Reverend Corey Brooks also said to me he's disgusted with Democratic policies and said that Black Lives Matter, for example, has never reached out to help him or anyone else trying to improve conditions on the South Side.
For a lot of people, it's not about the person, it's about the policies that we're fed up with. And as a result, I think this is going to be the largest amount of people who have voted for a Republican president in Chicago that we've seen.
I also spoke to one Venezuelan man who was so scared of being identified that he put a hoodie on and refused to face the camera. He told me in Spanish that he had to flee the building where he was being housed because a Venezuelan criminal gang took it over. He said if they knew he was talking, they'd end his family's life back in Venezuela with one bullet. You know, what struck me the most about our week in Chicago was how intelligent and self-aware these gang members and ex-gang members are about their community. You understand when you talk to them that joining a gang and making big money selling drugs is often too tempting to resist when faced with the lack of other real opportunities to make money. And for a place known mostly in news stories for being bloody and violent at night, the area is like a village during the daytime. Everyone knows each other, and believe it or not, there's a friendly vibe. But we spoke to a lot of people, and their patience is being stretched thin. I would not be surprised to see the gangs here taking action once the Venezuelans try to get a real foothold here.
So that last little bit where the reporter is talking about, I wouldn't be surprised once Tren de Aragua tries to get themselves self-established, then it'll become known who the key players are. And that's when you'll probably start to see a little bit of conflict. Let's scoot past some of this stuff. We've already seen a lot of this stuff in the video. But here's something. The latest figures show Chicago has spent almost $500 million over the last 2 years on the more than 42,000 migrants who've arrived since 2022. Now, not all of them are Venezuelans. Not all of them are Tren de Aragua. And we've never said that that's the case. But when you allow mass immigration with virtually no vetting, then you're going to let in a certain percentage of those who identify as Tren de Aragua. And, the background on Tren de Aragua is that their country basically said to the Venezuelan drug lords, we're giving up this prison and you guys run the prison. They had restaurants in there. They had everything in there. And then Venezuelan government basically dumped out all the prisons. And here they are in the United States, not only United States, but Chile and a bunch of other countries. And those are, I'm paraphrasing, but those are some rough details. So not only do you have hardworking Venezuelans that are coming to the United States for a better opportunity and getting away from violence, but you've got this whole, violent gang affiliated deal that's come to the United States. And now the culture wars are really going to start to clash. Cause what Chicago gang member is just going to stand by and go, oh, you know what? Let the immigrants do their thing. It's okay. I mean, we had a good run. We had 40, 50 years of, gang banging on the corner over there. But yeah, it's time to move on. It's time to hang up my gang affiliation and, just, retire and, maybe watch some TV and smoke some weed. Nobody's going to do that. That's just absolutely absurd. There's going to be a huge conflict. And I've been following this for a while. And I've seen from so many different aspects that this will probably be a thing. It's just a matter of when. Because it makes sense, right? And I think the local residents, I would be upset as well. If I'm a local resident, my kids are going hungry, I live below the poverty line, whatever it is, and I see half a $500 million going to a group of people who just came to the United States, and I've been struggling to make ends meet for all this time, I'd be pissed too. I'd be really upset. And, the whole gang conflict thing is just kind of next level step. Now you're infringing on crime opportunity. Opportunity to do criminal enterprise is being taken away. And I don't think the existing gang members in Chicago, I don't think they're going to go, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah. You know what? This is just kind of a sign from above that we need to, hang our pistols up and, just go quietly into the night. We got to let some newcomers take over. That's what we need to do. We had a big meeting, kind of like a Warriors type meeting. And, we talked about it and, no. They're absolutely not going to do that. They're going to do the opposite of that and come out shooting. I mean, that's what I do. If you got to protect your turf, right? Some of the Venezuelans coming belong to the one-time Venezuelan prison gang turned vicious multinational crime syndicate, Tren de Aragua, whose sources in Chicago told the Post are heavily armed, brazen, and spilling into areas of the South Side. It's not shocking, is it? You bring in 42,000 illegals. And yep, send them to Chicago. Send them to Chicago. It's going to be great. It's just going to be great. And then you have this kind of conflict, erupting. Who would have thought? Oh, yeah. You mean they're not all gardeners like we heard in the video? They're not all just gardeners back home in Venezuela who came here for, better soil to till? No. So those areas are traditionally controlled by hundreds of entrenched gangs, from the gangster disciples, Black Pea Stones, to the vice lords, to the Latin kings, and Satan's disciples. Yeah, that doesn't exactly sound like, folks you want to mess with, right? All right, we got Satan's disciples rolling in with category number 2. Yeah, that's why I think you could have mass conflict. And would it be shocking? No, this is business. This is how you take care of business, especially when it involves two highly illegal and highly violent criminal enterprises. Let's call it the way it is, right? So you got existing criminal enterprise in Chicago. They're going to duke it out in, violent gun battles with the newcomers. With Tren de Aragua, because it's kind of a loose coalition of gangs that have come out of Venezuela, but they all seem to have the same violent way of doing business, and they just don't take any nonsense at all. So once they're up and running, and throughout that process of getting up and running, That's kind of what we're talking about, right? Tren de Aragua members flashing gang signs and wearing their uniforms of choice, Chicago Bulls t-shirts and caps, number 23, could be seen outside the Standard Club migrant shelter downtown, where 2 local Chicago police officers told the Post they were trying to encroach on a local gang's drug dealing corner near a 7-Eleven store. Well, it starts off with 7-Eleven, and then you take over local Home Depot, and then you take over the grocery store, and then you just take over neighborhood after neighborhood. I mean, what have we already seen in Aurora, Colorado? How quickly did they take over those 3 apartment complexes? And the city just tried to say, there's no gangs here. They're not. Oh, yeah. And then all this information that came out, report after report. Yep, it's been infiltrated. Yep, they're taking over. Yep. And, their human trafficking kind of became well known. And that's what they specialize in, sex trafficking and human trafficking. So is it shocking that they're operating heavily in the south side of Chicago when you've had 42,000 illegals, newcomers, move into the area? No, it's not. Standard Club employees told the Post that there hadn't been any crime in the shelter and denied the presence of Venezuelan gang members. No, we haven't seen any. Those guys that look like Venezuelans wearing the Michael Jordan jerseys. Yeah, they're just, they're just big Michael Jordan fans. No, it's nonsense. That's Tren de Aragua. Get it right. So how soon will this take place? Man, I don't know. But I think what you'll do is, national media has put such a quash on the dogs for dinner, the cats for dinner, the ducks for dinner, that whole thing in Haiti. They're going so hard as we go into a presidential election to try and preserve this idea that all of the newcomers are just peace-loving families with children and it's all good and they're going to work real hard. The Haitians are going to work real hard. National media is going so hard at trying to keep a lid on all of that. Now, don't let a story get out where they are actually eating a duck. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because then the narrative will be, hey, they are doing that kind of thing. What's up with that? You let them into the country and they're eating our duck population? They're eating our cat population? Don't they know that those are pets? Now, when you come from Haiti, things are a little different. Protein is protein, right? So, what you'll see is you will see these storylines where there will be some type of shooting and, we won't identify who the parties are. And then it'll come out weeks later. And then all of a sudden start to tie these pieces together. We got a turf war. We've got a gang turf war, and it's between an international gang and a local Southside Chicago gang who's, part of a bigger, gang like we talked about, like Satan's disciples, one of those guys. There's been a lot going on with the migrant gangs that nobody's even hearing about, said Zach Massey, 27, a street leader who first went to prison in 2015 and just recently got out. If he's in a gang, he'd know, right? I think that's what's going on. You've got a bunch of criminal activity happening in real time. And none of that information is getting out because national media is so one-sided. Unless there's a shooting that makes page 1, you're not covering this kind of stuff. You're not covering all the low-level stuff going on because any type of coverage of the illegals, the newcomers, doesn't bode well for a certain political affiliation. Because they were the border czar, right? The border czar that wasn't the border czar. They were trying to find the root causes of, immigration for about 3 different countries. Whole thing is just wild. I mean, who would have thought you bring millions of people into the United States without vetting them, and then there'd be some criminals that get in there? Not shocking. I mean, it's mind-blowing to think that, let's just go ahead and let millions of folks in and we'll just see how it goes. Should be fine. I mean, they're nice people. They've committed to me, for the most part, that they're good people. And yet you're seeing storyline after storyline after storyline saying something else, saying something different. Wild times we live in. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.